I think Jet Novuka was an unpopular opinion. Unpopular opinion used to have Nsigi Mazwai as the host. It has two gentlemen now who look like African spirituality practitioners who host the show, who have these conversations about being African, being black, the state of the black person, the state of the black man, etc. I have not watched the interview and the conversation with the Uputu Jet Novuka that we know as Uzakes from Yizo, Izupra Zakes. If you haven't checked it out, Yizo is back on, not back on, it's on Netflix, especially for the kids that didn't understand the hype or the kids that don't know what a hype we'd have if we speak about Yizo. So Jet Novuka and the gentleman that was hosting him touched on some very, very sensitive topics about black people, the state of the black nation, how things were meant to be, breaking down some of the words and their meanings. And it triggered me to make this video because part of the conversations they were having was the fact that, or not the fact that, the idea that the head of the house is not the man. The head of the house is actually a woman. And it's the man that supports the woman as the head of the house. They broke down the meaning of umzi or umuzi and what that actually meant, speak about the word musadi and where these words come from and how we used to live as Africans. I remember sitting with Usisumandi Zamashego, who also said, again, another idea that contrary to popular belief, back in the day before colonization, Africa was matriarchal and man did not own any land. Man would, or rather women would own the land. Jet Novuka and them spoke about how you speak about umuzika gogo. You never speak about umuzika mkhulu, for the reason that it would be the woman that would run the household. I posted a tweet and I asked, I'm going to read the comments, should men own property? Should men own land? Or should men's general purpose be to work the land for the benefit of the women and the children, such that women's responsibility generally is to take care of the home and to raise the children? But the man can move anywhere he wants. The woman, this is her land, this is her home, this is her property, and she should own it. And man should understand that at any time he needs a place to stay, he must work the land, and the woman allows him to stay on that land because he works it. It's a concept, it's an idea. A lot of the other concepts were, well, Sismandi Samashego spoke about that. I remember 50 Cent from America, the rapper, one of my favorites, 50, it's 50, speaking about how his grandfather used to give his grandmother his entire paycheck so that she could run the household and not ask him for any money because she's got all the money. And he'd then ask an allowance from her so she manages the finances of the home. He goes out, he works, he comes home with the money, he gives it over to her. In these idealistic conversations about Africa and being African and how we live and how colonization has come and destroyed the family unit and how we live, we're not having honest chats about how we got here in the first place. Black men in 2023 still refuse to fully acknowledge that they lost, that they were conquered. We speak about colonization, but we don't speak about the realities. When we speak about the fact that the man had to leave the home to go work in the mines and the factories and the farms, why was that? It is because they were defeated by the colonialists, defeated, and they had to succumb to that way of living. Until black men are honest about why they find themselves in this situation as a black nation, and then take accountability. Look, I wasn't there. I can't say, well, they beat me. They didn't beat me. But our forefathers, our ancestors were defeated. And we now, as their descendants, need to have these hard conversations. Guys, if our forefathers and ancestors were defeated and we look around now and we see poverty in the black nation, we see dysfunctional homes, we see alcohol abuse, drug abuse, we see a lot of violence, and we see an elite white group that is rich, some Indians that are doing very well, and then obviously they've got the puppet black politicians that do well and have BEE shares, etc. And we sit and we say, but this cannot be right. What is the solution? And we need to decide between three options. The first option is we need to decide if we want to go back to how our forefathers lived. Do we want to own land? Do we want to work the land? And in what capacity? And then we need to have a plan. Whether it's buying the land, go to the cities, to the towns, let's go work, take that money and then buy land. 2 hectares. 2 hectares of land, you say, this is where my family is going to live. and I will have some livestock, and I will have some crops, and we will have a home. And on this land, we will live and we will grow our own food. And then any excess, we will then trade with the world out there, whether it's the rest of South Africans or export to the world. And we will take the money that we receive and we will make sure that we have electricity, we have running water, we have internet connection, Wi-Fi. And then maybe we can start building these workshops on our land where we are teaching ourselves and our children how to manufacture equipment, how to fix electrical appliances, create cell phones, etc. And then we also choose whether to homeschool our children or we choose to say in these areas, we will then have these institutions that teach our children how to be educated, literate, and skilled to work for the family. Send your children to school to learn biology, science, technology, some history, practical skills, business studies, so that they can come back home and add value to the home as a concept of how we used to live as Africans. But that needs to be a decision, and then there needs to be a plan, however long that plan is going to be, and then you must get buy-in from maybe as a man, as a black man, other black men that think like you, and then black women. Don't force this on black women that don't want that want soft life and living in the suburbs, etc. Find the type of woman you want to build with. That's the one option. The second option is obviously assimilating to whiteness and a European way of living. And every time you encounter an issue, a problem, ask yourself, what would a white person do? I have met a girl that I really like. I want her to be my partner for life. What would a white person do? A white person would go and speak to this lady. If they are Christian, they do it via the church, and they would go and get married. And the girl's father would pay a dowry to pay for the wedding. And that would be whiteness. No lobolo, no mabo, membeso, and these things, because you're like, I'm not living an African life. If you are fighting with the mother or the father of your children, what would white people do? They would get the families to mediate, they would get a family advocate, family advisor, etc., or they would take it to court, children's court, and resolve it in that way. If we are struggling financially, what would a white person do? They would try and get themselves into school, from school get qualifications, from qualifications get a job, and then make money and try and get themselves out of there. What would white people do? Not what would black people do, because you're accepting black people in the way they were living were defeated. So we will assimilate to whiteness. That's the second option. The third option is a hybrid, a bit more complex. Taking from the African way of living, taking from a European way of living, and creating a new model. And then you need to define this new model, whether in a book, in documentaries, in sit-downs, etc. Define. We will borrow this from Africanness. We will borrow this from the Europeans. We will borrow some of these things from the black community. We will borrow these things from the white community. And we will come with a new model. And then go and begin educating the people within your sphere and your circle. This is how we do things. If it means you set up some type of a church, an institution where every week you are sitting discussing the mechanics, if you are going to create social media platforms where you are educating, I mean, you think of Umkhulu Nsingiza and the empire of Kemet. That is what they are trying to do, the great empire of Kemet, to say we will have new institutions that help conscientize the type of people we are trying to attract. And when people meet you in the future, you can say, no, we do not live in an African way. We do not live in a European way. We have got a new way. Let's say, for example, you call it a penalist way of living, which is a hybrid, borrowing from some of these others and creating a new thing. And this is what it looks like. But until black men accept that they lost or their forefathers lost, and that is the reason we have dysfunction. And then after acknowledging that hard fact, then from there say, well, how do we rectify this? Because I hear Mkhulu Nsingiza, Joshua Maponga, Ubutu Velimpele, people like Komandisa Mashego, people like Nsigi Mazwai, people like Dr. Umar Ifatunde. I listen to a lot of Pan-African voices that fantasize about a modern African way of living, a modern African way of being. Patrice Lumumba, I think it's Professor Patrice Lumumba, if I'm not mistaken. These are the people that speak out there and they're advocates. But you need to acknowledge what happened. And then you need to be like, this is the plan. It cannot always be that you are just complaining. You are just whining. You are just frustrated. What now? And one of the things that I have come to realize, which is fundamentally important, is if you want to beat systems, you can only do it with other systems. You cannot defeat systems with just a group of people. You need to build parallel systems to defeat these systems, or you need to create the type of systems that infiltrate. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, if you've got a legal system in South Africa where you have the judges, the courts, the lawyers, etc., you've got a constitution, you've got all these different laws. If you want to go against that, you can go on social media, you can go on mainstream media, you can give speeches, you can host workshops and speak about the issues you have with the legal system. And that is you, and it's great, and people get excited, and you might influence a small part. But if you really, really think there's an issue with the system, you need to build your own system. We can call it the tribal court system, where you have built your own spaces, your own institutions around the country. And you've got your own, whatever you want to call a judge, whatever you want to call a lawyer, whatever you want to call that process. And then people can say, I do not believe in this system, I will join that system. Schooling system, same. A lot of us have issues with our current schools. They are not going to change because the ANC government, the rest of the world, the schooling system they have is outdated from the industrial age. It's meant to create these factory workers. It is not serving the people anymore. It's not serving the modern economy anymore. So now we can complain and we can be like, oh, the school has coding, the school has robotics, like a little bit of tweaking here and there. Or you can actually build your own prototype of a school and say in this school, the children learn how to speak, how to debate, how to challenge. These children learn how to work with their hands. They can build and fix cell phones. They can build and fix laptops. These children know how to grow food. We've taught them how to plant, how to weed, how to fertilize, and how to harvest their crops. And then we've taught them business studies, how to sell a skill, how to sell a service, how to sell a product. And we've gotten them to connect with technology to speak to the whole world. Maybe we've taught them how to dance. Maybe we've taught them how to sing, how to play certain instruments, and we've taught them how to use the internet to go out there and ignite, to travel, to solve problems, to write books. And you create an institution like that, and the children that go there, they come out as these fully developed human beings. And then you scale these schools, and people that do not like the standard schooling system will come to your schooling system and say, these or this is the type of school and schooling and education I want for my child. It takes systems to defeat systems. And of course, if your system is not strong enough, some people use weapons. For example, the British colonial system, the European system, may not arguably be superior to an African way of living and African spirituality, but they bulldoze their system onto Africans using violence and weapons and murder, mass murder. So you also need to understand that once you have a system, the other thing is to protect that system. And you protect it through writing books, spreading the word, educating people, building institutions, and then making sure that you have weapons, firepower to be able to defend yourself. And where possible, infiltrate the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and other platforms where when people speak, you can say we have got representatives there that defend us as the Jewish people, that defend us as the Islamic nation, that defend us as Pan-Africanists, that defend us as whoever. You must have representatives in these spaces defending and fighting for your sovereignty of belief and way of living. Very beautiful, and I think I'm going to take time to go and listen to the conversation with Novuka. Shout out to him for his consciousness, for his intelligence, for his ability to articulate, especially in the language of the African, isintu. Novuka uthetha isiXhosa, uphuma eMpuma Koloni. Siyabulela tata, siyabulela bhuti. Enkosi kakhulu for educating us. Fundamentally important. And we need to understand these things. And I guess maybe just a quick one for people that were moved by the conversation and conversations like that. I urge you to take some of the clips and then interpret them into other languages so that we can school, especially Black Africans that may not understand isiXhosa or isiZulu or Nguni languages. People maybe of the Sotho, Tsonga, Venda, Tswana nation, Swati nation, Ndebele nation, Ndebele Zanguni, who maybe did not understand. And then even English, French, Swahili, so that some of these people that are not aware can also plug in and be like, we want to know more. Please educate us. There's a shift in the consciousness in the world. Because I can tell you now, some of the old systems, Some of the aggressive capitalism, aggressive violence, aggressive European colonial systems, they are not sustainable. They do not work with nature. They destroy. They make people fight against each other. We've got a dysfunction of families. Not just black families, white families are struggling with some of these concepts. Where families should be sitting together, spending time together, holding each other, singing, dancing, feeding each other and saying, how do we build as a family unit? How do we trust each other? If we've got issues, how do we get family elders to come and resolve without going to lawyers and judges that do not know us? We need our people here. Something to think about. Very, very important conversation to think about. And it does not have to be for a tribe. It does not have to be for a nation, for a continent. It can be for yourself and it can be for your family. Say to yourself and your family, my forefathers, ancestors were defeated. Where am I now? Do we have a functional family? If you do, if you have a happy mom, dad, children, you guys are making money, you guys have skills, are educated, you guys are adding value to the world, and you're extracting value comfortably, then you guys are fine. And maybe that model just needs to be tightened up and you can say, we are winning. Whether we are Christian, whether we believe in Zulu customs, whether we are Muslim, it does not matter. You're like, we are winning. As Rastafarians, as an example. We're good. Let's solidify this thing. If you look at your family situation in yourself and you say, look, I'm addicted to alcohol. I smoke too much. I'm addicted to drugs. Myself and my partner are constantly beating each other up. Our children are not doing well at school. I hate my uncles. I'm fighting with my father. We are broken. Then you need to say, look, we were defeated. We are broken now. What do I want? Do I want an African way of living, a European way of living, or a hybrid? And then after that, from where I am now, what is the first step to get myself there? Do I go to rehab? Do we go for therapy as a family? Do I maybe write books? Do I maybe make social media content to engage other people? Do I maybe ask Penuel the Black Pen for a consultation and say, Pen, I'm struggling with my woman, with my man, with my children, with my family. Please guide me. Please come through and let's sit and let's talk. Call me to come and speak and mediate between families and say, guys, how do you guys win? And then begin that very, very difficult but very necessary and rewarding journey of solidifying your family and finding a model that works for you so that you guys can thrive in the world. This is the work that I believe our generation needs to do. There were people that fought politically. There are people that are trying to win economically and financially. Some of us need to do this thing of doing a spiritual, psychological exercise of liberation and finding self and consciousness and trying to figure out, who am I? Who am I? Who was I? Who do I want to be? And find that identity and be solid in that identity and confident in that identity. And then make sure that you heal your family, heal your loved ones, and create a united front, a beautiful front of working together with the skills and the talents that your family has, speaking in one language, singing together, enjoying each other, understanding each other, being on the same wavelength, and then seeing, how do we build together? Do we want to make money? Do we want to make music? Do we want to travel the world? Do we want to move to another country? Do we want to grow food? What do we want to do as a family that is on the same frequency, so that we can rise to a higher level of consciousness and maybe attract other families to ours? The Jewish nation is a family that attracts people. The Muslim family is a family. The Rasta family is a family that attracts people. The Pan-Africanist family is a family. How do you find this family that speaks to you and says, I am here, this is our book, these are our scriptures, these are our institutions, and this is how we win? Penuel the Black Pen, Danke.